The Liber Alvel Legis. In a Cairo hotel room in 1904, a man claimed a spirit dictated a new Bible to him, one that declared the age of gods over and the age of man begun. In the spring of 1904, Aleister Crowley, the British occultist, found himself in a rented room in Cairo with his wife, Rose. He wasn't seeking revelation, nor meditating. He was on his honeymoon. Yet over the course of the next 3 days, what Crowley claimed happened would become one of the strangest and most controversial transmissions in modern esoteric history. According to Crowley, a disembodied intelligence named Aiwass spoke to him from the corner of the room. It dictated verses line by line as Crowley frantically scribbled them onto paper. The result was Liber Alvel Legis, the Book of the Law, a text that would forever redefine Crowley's life and spark a spiritual movement blending magic, philosophy, and rebellion. The book opens with a single thunderous declaration: "This is the Book of the Law." It speaks through 3 voices, each claiming to represent a divine force. The first voice is that of Nuit, the goddess of infinite space. The second is Hadit, the point of consciousness that exists within every being. The third is Ra-Hoor-Khuit, the hawk-headed god of war and the sun, a symbol of the dawning aeon. The book's most famous line became a creed that would echo through occult and countercultural circles for generations. "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." To Crowley, this was not a call to chaos or selfishness. He explained that will referred to one's true purpose, the core destiny written into every soul. To follow this will was to align with the divine order of the universe itself. But to critics, the phrase sounded dangerously close to moral anarchy, dressed in religious garb. Crowley claimed that the Book of the Law heralded the dawn of a new age, the Aeon of Horus. The gods of the past, he said, ruled through obedience and fear. Now humanity would rise to claim divine authority for itself. "Every man and every woman is a star," the text proclaims, each shining by their own inner light, free to chart their own course. Even Crowley admitted that he barely understood the significance of what he had written. He described the experience as a form of possession. The words poured through him so quickly that he could scarcely keep up. The manuscript remained hidden for years, a bomb thrown into the world of thought, Crowley would later say. When the book eventually surfaced, it divided scholars and spiritual seekers alike. For some, it was a revelatory text, the next stage in the evolution of spiritual consciousness. For others, it was a dangerous delusion, born from obsession and ego. Yet Liber Alvel Legis was far from ordinary. Its language was precise, filled with numerological codes, Egyptian deities, and Kabbalistic correspondences. Crowley believed every letter contained secret meaning. When he studied the text, he saw patterns linking it to ancient systems of magic, astrology, and sacred geometry. To him, the design of the book seemed too intricate to have come from his own mind. The more he studied, the more he wondered about the origin of the text. Was Aiwass a spirit, an aspect of his higher self, or perhaps some collective intelligence that had used him as a vessel? Crowley never found an answer. As decades passed, the Book of the Law became the cornerstone of Thelema, Crowley's new philosophy of spiritual independence. Its influence spread quietly through occult lodges, magical orders, and later into art, psychology, and counterculture. Even rock musicians and modern mystics would quote its lines, often without realizing where they came from. But its central message, that of divine individuality, left many with an uncomfortable question. If "do what thou wilt" is the highest command, what prevents that will from becoming tyranny? When every soul claims divine authority, who decides what is right? Some argued that Liber Alvel Legis was a prophecy, the birth of a human-centered spirituality, fit for the modern world. Others saw it as a warning that the worship of the self leads not to enlightenment but to ruin. Perhaps both interpretations are true. Every revelation, after all, carries its shadow, and the Book of the Law remains a paradox, half scripture, half mirror, showing us both the potential for divine freedom and the dangers of unchecked autonomy. The real question remains, is absolute freedom the path of divine evolution or moral decay masquerading as enlightenment? As Crowley wrestled with voices from beyond across Europe, another man began hearing his own voices. These did not command him to conquer or create, but to understand. He would spend years drawing, writing, and conversing with the unseen, until his mind nearly broke. The Red Book. Carl Jung locked it away for half a century, a red leather tome filled with visions that blurred the line between madness and revelation. In 1913, Carl Jung began to dream of blood spreading across Europe. He saw towers collapsing, cities drowning, and a red tide rising to consume the world. Months later, World War I began, and Jung, one of the most respected psychiatrists in Europe, started to question his own mind. For years he had worked beside Sigmund Freud, helping shape the foundations of modern psychology. But what came next could not be explained by theory. Jung began hearing voices, seeing figures that spoke in symbols, not words. Instead of resisting them, he began to write. He called this process active imagination. To him, these visions were not hallucinations or delusions. They were messages from the deepest layers of the psyche, from what he would later call the collective unconscious. Over time, Jung met the beings that lived there. He described a winged old man named Philemon, who became his teacher. He encountered Elijah and Salome, figures of wisdom and temptation, light and shadow. He recorded their conversations, drew their faces, and mapped the inner world they revealed to him, as if charting another civilization within his own mind. He painted what he saw: serpents coiling around suns, souls walking through radiant fire, gods being born from darkness. Each vision he transcribed in perfect calligraphy, illuminated in color. The result was Liber Novus, the Red Book. But Jung feared what he had created. He was a scientist, a man of reason. And yet his secret writings looked less like analysis and more like revelation. So he locked them away and told almost no one. Even his closest students only whispered about the hidden book. For decades it remained unseen, but its ideas quietly shaped everything Jung would later teach: the archetypes, the shadow, the process of individuation. He came to believe that myths, gods, and symbols appear in every culture, not because they are passed down, but because they are born within us, the mind dreaming itself into form. His descent into the unconscious became a map for human wholeness. To heal, Jung wrote, one must confront the depths, not as pathology, but as a living creative force. Dreams, madness, and myth were not sicknesses to cure, but doorways to understanding. When the Red Book was finally published in 2009, the world was stunned. It wasn't a work of psychology, it was a spiritual epic. Its pages were filled with illuminated visions, dialogues with gods, and landscapes of the soul. For many, it revealed that Jung didn't merely study myth, he lived it. Here was the founder of analytical psychology, stepping beyond the limits of reason, into the same realms that mystics, shamans, and prophets had walked for millennia. He became both observer and participant in his own inner apocalypse. Was this discovery or creation? Did Jung uncover the hidden symbols that lie within all humanity, or did his mind invent them to bring meaning to chaos? Perhaps the distinction doesn't matter, because either way, his visions transformed our understanding of what it means to be human. Through the Red Book, Jung gave us a language for the unseen, for the gods, dreams, and voices that shape every life from within. He turned the human mind into sacred ground, but Jung's writings raised one last question, one he could never answer. If our minds hold such vast worlds within, where do those worlds come from? Are they born in us, or are we only remembering something already written elsewhere? The Tibetan Book of the Dead. When death comes in Tibet, monks kneel beside the body, not to mourn, but to read. Every word is meant to guide the soul through visions that will shape its next journey. High in the Himalayan plateau, where the air is thin and the sky meets the earth, death is not seen as an end, but as a transition. When a person dies in Tibet, monks gather beside the body. They open a small manuscript, carefully wrapped in cloth. The Bardo Thodol, often referred to in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. They do not weep, they begin to read. Each verse is directed to the departed soul, which is believed to linger near the body for several days, hearing every word. The text begins gently. O noble one, now the time of death has come. You are about to experience the radiant light of pure reality. Recognize it, and you shall be free. Bardo Thodol means liberation through hearing. It is said to have been hidden in a cave for centuries, written by Padmasambhava, the Indian sage who brought Buddhism to Tibet and later rediscovered by a lama in the 14th century. For the faithful, this is not just a book of rituals, but a guide, a map that leads through realms unseen. The text describes 3 stages, or bardos, through which consciousness travels after death. The first, Chikai Bardo, begins the moment life fades. Here the soul encounters a brilliant white light, representing ultimate reality. If the soul recognizes the light, it is freed instantly from the cycle of rebirth. If fear arises, the soul enters the next stage. In Chonyid Bardo, the soul experiences visions, first peaceful deities, radiating compassion and light. They represent wisdom and the true nature of the mind. But if the soul cannot accept them, the visions shift. Wrathful gods appear, with fangs and flames, their faces twisting into storms of sound and color. The text reminds the listener, these are not real. They are projections of the mind. If the soul can recognize them as such, it will awaken. If not, the illusions take over, leading into the final bardo. In Sidpa Bardo, the soul drifts, searching for rebirth. Desire, regret, and longing for a new body arise. The text warns, every craving is a doorway, and what you cling to shapes your next life. For centuries, this text shaped how Tibetans approached death. It was read to the dying, whispered to the newly dead, and studied by monks preparing for their own passing. Each reading was both a farewell and a lesson. That reality, whether peaceful or terrifying, is merely a reflection of the mind. When Western explorers first translated the Bardo Thodol in the early 20th century, psychologists took note. Carl Jung saw it as a reflection of the human psyche, not a map of heaven or hell, but of the unconscious mind itself. To him, the radiant deities symbolized enlightenment. The demons were shadows of suppressed fear. For Jung, death was the ultimate psychological journey, a confrontation with the mind's true nature. But Tibetan masters taught that the Bardo Thodol was never just for the dead. It was a guide for the living, a manual for dissolving illusions before death ever arrives. By meditating on its verses, one could experience the bardos while still alive, breaking the cycle of rebirth through understanding rather than fear. Every line, every chant is a reminder that what we call reality is a temporary dream, that death is not a punishment, but a transition, and that liberation does not lie in escaping the afterlife, but in seeing through it. As the final page is read, the monks close the manuscript. The room falls silent. The incense fades, carried by the cold mountain air. If the soul has recognized its true nature, it is free. If not, it drifts toward another birth and another opportunity to awaken. The Book of Thoth. Ancient scribes whispered of a scroll so powerful that it could command the sky, speak to animals, and even raise the dead. Its author, Thoth, god of wisdom, cursed any mortal who dared to read it. In ancient Egypt, words were more than mere communication. They were a force of creation. Every prayer, every hieroglyph carried within it the power to shape reality itself. No god embodied this power more fully than Thoth. Thoth, the scribe of the gods, was the patron of writing, magic, and hidden knowledge. He was believed to have invented the sacred art of hieroglyphs, measured the passage of time, and recorded every judgment in the afterlife. But the most forbidden of all his legacies was a book said to contain the very formulas of existence. The legend of this book comes to us through the papyrus Setna II, a story that blends warning and adventure. It tells of Prince Setna Kayamwas, a learned magician, who learns that Thoth's sacred book lies buried in a tomb in Memphis. The book, he is told, can unlock the secrets of the universe. It can allow the reader to speak to animals, converse with gods, and even raise the dead. But it is sealed in the coffin of an ancient magician, protected by powerful spells and the wrath of the divine. Despite these warnings, Setna is driven by pride and curiosity. He steals the book. From the moment he lays his hands on it, everything begins to unravel. Visions haunt him. His family suffers. The gods intervene. The story ends with Setna being forced to return the book, bowing before powers that no mere mortal can control. The myth carries a clear message. Some knowledge is too dangerous to be possessed, not because it's false, but because it's too true, too powerful, too dangerous to be understood by human minds. Yet, centuries later, scholars and mystics sought to reclaim that forbidden wisdom. Greek thinkers under the Ptolemaic dynasty reimagined Thoth as Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great Hermes. This fusion of Egyptian and Greek thought gave rise to the Hermetic corpus, a collection of texts that explored divine mind, cosmic order, and the power of words to shape reality. These writings would go on to inspire alchemy, astrology, and the esoteric philosophies of the Renaissance. Through the Hermetic tradition, Thoth's voice echoed again, now as Hermes. His book became less a literal object and more a symbol, the hidden pattern that lay behind all sacred language. Every word of power, every incantation, every symbol of transformation traced its origins back to that same ancient myth. Even the early tarot deck, with its images of magicians, hierophants, and cosmic wheels, was said by occultists to reflect fragments of the lost book of Thoth. The tarot was not just a game of chance, but a portable library of esoteric wisdom, a coded map of the soul's journey through life. But at its core, one theme remained unchanged: the belief that words themselves held force. To speak was to create. Reality itself could be bent to the will of language, if one knew the right words to speak. Egyptian priests called this Heka, the magical speech that sustains the cosmos. It was not a metaphor. They believed that when Thoth spoke, the world answered. Every sunrise, every gust of wind, every judgment of a king was, in their eyes, an echo of his divine grammar. Modern Egyptologists have noted the striking similarities between this idea and the ancient Greek notion of the logos, the creative word, the divine spark that shapes matter and thought. This concept later made its way into the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word. To read the Book of Thoth, then, was not just to read, it was to speak creation into being, to command the elements, to raise the dead, to call the stars by name. And that was where the danger lay. For if the voice could create, it could also destroy. Setna's story is a cautionary tale. Even a prince, a learned man of magic, could be undone by the knowledge he sought to master. In a universe woven together by divine speech, to misuse words was to challenge the gods themselves. Thus, the Book of Thoth came to symbolize the ultimate temptation, the yearning to possess knowledge too vast, too dangerous to be controlled. It became a metaphor for the hidden cost of seeking forbidden power, the price one pays for knowing too much. In the end, the question remains, if speech can create reality, who truly holds dominion over the world, the speaker or the silence that lies beneath? The Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible. A monk sentenced to death made a desperate bargain: finish a Bible in one night, and his life would be spared. By dawn, a massive book lay completed, and in its center, a portrait of the devil. In the heart of medieval Europe, within a small Benedictine monastery, a condemned monk awaited his fate. His sentence was final, death by imprisonment. But that night, he made a promise his abbot could not refuse. If given the chance to live, he would create a single book that would contain all human knowledge and glorify the monastery for eternity. The abbot, perhaps entertained by the monk's audacity, agreed. And so, the monk began his work. When dawn broke, the guards opened his cell and discovered the impossible. A manuscript larger than anything ever seen before, bound in wood and iron, weighing over 160 pounds. Its pages stretched taller than a man's torso. The letters, written in perfect Latin, were precise and uniform, with not a single correction. It was called Codex Gigas, the giant book. Every line appeared to be written by the same hand, There were no mistakes, no irregular strokes. Modern analysts later confirmed that it would have taken decades, not hours, to complete, yet the handwriting remained flawless. Inside the book were the complete texts of the Old and New Testaments, along with works on history, medicine, and exorcism. One section even catalogued demons by name, detailing methods to expel them. And in the very center, a full-page portrait of the devil, drawn in vivid ink. No other medieval Christian manuscript offers such prominence to his image. A monstrous figure crouched between two towers, tongue outstretched, claws bared, staring directly at anyone who dared to turn the page. For some, this was evidence of the monk's pact with the devil. The legend says that when the monk realized he could not finish in time, he prayed, not to God, but to the fallen angel. In exchange for his soul, he begged for help. By morning, the book was complete. And to mark the deal, he painted his dark benefactor in its heart. The story spread, passed from one monastery to the next, and wherever the codex went, misfortune seemed to follow. During the 30 Years' War, Swedish soldiers seized it as war booty. That same night, fires broke out across the surrounding libraries. Every other manuscript burned. Only the codex gigas remained intact. Scholars who studied it described it as a paradox, a book of faith bound in fear, a symbol of devotion wrapped in superstition. It contained prayers for protection from the devil and the devil's very own portrait. The book's margins tell another mystery. Tiny notes in faded ink mark feast days and penitential rituals, additions that seem to track the monk's own spiritual unraveling. Some pages bear fingerprints pressed into the ink, as though the monk wrote in frantic haste. Other pages show faint brown stains, which modern scientists believe could be blood. Tests reveal that the parchment is made from nearly 160 calf hides. To create it alone would have required a small fortune. Yet no record of such a commission exists, and no other scribe from the monastery is named. Researchers still debate who the monk was, or whether he ever truly existed. Some believe the handwriting's consistency might come from one man's obsession, stretched over a lifetime. But even so, the question remains, what kind of faith drives a man to write for 50 years in solitude to produce a book that glorifies God, but also immortalizes the devil? When the book reached Prague in the 17th century, Emperor Rudolf II locked it in his private chamber. He had a deep interest in alchemy, immortality, and forbidden texts. He called it the Devil's Bible. He ordered that no priest be allowed to touch it without his permission. Today, the Codex Gigas resides in the National Library of Sweden. Its pages are well preserved, its ink still vivid, and the devil's face still stares back with a faint, knowing smile, as if waiting for his name to be spoken again. Was this immense work born from faith, or fear disguised as devotion? And if one man could channel such power onto parchment, what kind of text could guide a soul not to heaven or hell, but through the unknown realms in between? The Egyptian Book of the Dead. The dead weren't silent in ancient Egypt. They wrote spells, detailed instructions to navigate gods, demons, and even the judgments of the afterlife. The question isn't why they wrote it, but who first dared to read it while still alive. In ancient Egypt, death wasn't viewed as an end, but as a journey, a passage through realms beyond our sight. The Egyptians didn't imagine the afterlife as peaceful rest. They saw it as a treacherous landscape, filled with gates, guardians, and divine judges ready to test the soul's worth. So, they prepared for it as if embarking on a dangerous expedition, armed not with swords, but with words. They called it the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Today we call it the Book of the Dead. But it was never just one book. It was a collection of over 190 spells, instructions inscribed on papyrus scrolls, the walls of tombs, or even the linen wrappings of mummies themselves. Each spell was meant to guide the soul through the underworld, step by step, toward a paradise known as the Field of Reeds, a mirror of Egypt, but eternal and perfected. No two copies were the same. Each spell was personalized, with the name of the deceased, their family, and the offerings made to the gods. A farmer's scroll might ask for fertile fields in the afterlife, while a priest's would focus on secret words needed to pass divine gates. But the power of the book didn't just come from the spells. It came from who had access to them. For centuries, the priesthood guarded these texts like precious secrets. Most Egyptians couldn't afford them. Each papyrus had to be hand-copied by temple scribes and ritually blessed. Even the ink, a mix of carbon, ochre, and oil, had to be sacred, designed to last forever. Some scholars believe certain spells were deliberately cryptic, their meanings hidden behind puzzles and hieroglyphs only initiates could understand. These weren't just prayers, they were codes, spiritual encryption meant to protect the soul from cosmic dangers. Among all the spells, one stood out, spell 125, the weighing of the heart. In this spell, the soul stands before Osiris, the lord of the underworld, facing a large balance scale. On one side is the heart of the deceased, thought to contain the truth of their life. On the other side, a feather, symbolizing Ma'at, the goddess of truth and order. If the heart weighed heavier than the feather, it meant the soul carried guilt. And waiting next to the scale was Amit, the devourer, part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus. She didn't punish, she erased. To be devoured by Amit was to be wiped from existence, to lose any chance of rebirth, to be forgotten. The only defense was honesty. In the Hall of Two Truths, the dead had to declare their innocence with the negative confession, 42 statements of what they had not done. I have not stolen, I have not murdered, I have not caused pain. If the heart was pure, the soul would pass through to the field of reeds, where they would be reunited with their family, and life would begin again under an eternal sun. But there's more to this story. When archaeologists uncovered the papyrus of Ani in the 19th century, they didn't find vague prayers. They found a detailed, step-by-step guide, a manual, not a myth. The text read more like a legal document than a collection of poetry. Every action, every utterance, followed specific rules, formulas, and responses, as if the Egyptians believed that resurrection could be achieved through precise rituals and law. That discovery reshaped our understanding. It suggested that the Egyptians didn't just believe in an afterlife, they believed it could be mastered. With the right knowledge, they thought, the soul could be transformed from mortal to divine. Perhaps that's why some scholars now call it humanity's first exploration of consciousness. Each spell, each symbol, wasn't just about surviving death. It was about awakening to the true nature of life itself. To the Egyptians, death was a mirror of life. To pass through it meant understanding yourself fully, freeing your spirit from illusion. So maybe the Book of the Dead wasn't just a guide for the departed. Maybe it was a manual for understanding the living. Was it truly a book for the dead, or an ancient map of the mind wrapped in the guise of religion? The Talmud, the Kabbalah texts. Some rabbis warned their students, study these symbols too soon and you'll lose your mind. Yet within them lies an ancient belief that the universe itself can be read like a language. At the center of Jewish mysticism lies a quiet tension. That divine truth can be both revealed and hidden. For centuries, the Talmud, an immense collection of law, commentary, and debate, guided daily life and spiritual practice. But beneath its surface, some scholars believed there was something deeper, a code written into scripture, reflecting the structure of creation itself. The early sages spoke of these secrets carefully. They called them Ma'aseh Bereshit, the work of creation, and Ma'aseh Merkava, the work of the chariot. To study them was to approach the machinery of the divine. Some rabbis cautioned, he who explores these mysteries before his time may lose his reason. For to understand the act of creation was, in a sense, to touch its fire. Out of these early traditions grew Kabbalah, the received teaching. Its most famous text, the Zohar, appeared in 13th century Spain, written in an ancient form of Aramaic. It was presented as a rediscovered wisdom from the age of the prophets, a record of how the divine energy moves through the universe. The Zohar describes creation not as a single moment, but as a gradual unfolding through 10 emanations known as the Sephirot. These emanations, Keter, crown, Chokmah, wisdom, Bina, understanding, and 7 others descending toward the physical world, form the channels through which divine light becomes matter. Spirit takes form. The unseen becomes visible. But the light was too powerful. According to Kabbalistic tradition, the vessels that contained it could not hold its intensity. They shattered, scattering sparks of divinity across all creation. Every stone, every creature, every breath came to hold a fragment of that original light. This moment, the Shevarat HaKelim, or breaking of the vessels, became one of Kabbalah's central mysteries. To study this process was to study existence itself. Through meditation, prayer, and the sacred arrangement of Hebrew letters, mystics sought to reunite these scattered sparks, to restore harmony between the divine and the world. Because of the power such study was believed to hold, teachers warned their students, "Do not approach Kabbalah until your mind and heart are prepared." Tradition held that one should be at least 40 years old before beginning. The Tree of Life diagram, which maps the 10 Sephirot and the 22 paths connecting them, became a central symbol of this knowledge. Its design influenced later alchemists, Renaissance mystics, and early psychologists who saw in it a map of the human soul, a way to understand how the divine and human mirror one another. In the 16th century, a mystic from Safed named Isaac Luria transformed Kabbalah yet again. He taught that the breaking of the vessels was not only a cosmic event, but an ongoing human task. Through moral action and compassion, he said, people could help repair the broken light, a process called tikkun olam, the restoration of the world. Every act of kindness, every word of truth helped mend creation itself. This teaching gave humanity a new place within the cosmos. People were not just witnesses to divine order, they were participants in its renewal. Their choices, their words, could help restore balance to the universe, but it left mystics with a question that has never entirely faded. If humanity can help repair creation, does that make us co-creators in the divine plan, or trespassers within it? The Book of Raziel. They say the first man was never left alone. As he wept outside Eden, an angel descended, carrying a book said to hold the secrets of the universe. It was a gift that could lift a mortal closer to the divine. According to legend, Adam's first gift after exile wasn't comfort, it was knowledge. An angel named Raziel, the keeper of secrets, appeared beside him, holding a radiant book. This was Sefer Raziel Hamalach, the book of the angel Raziel, said to be written by the hand of God himself. Every letter shimmered with divine fire. Within its pages were the patterns of creation, how the heavens were formed, how the stars moved, how words could shape the world around them. It was both a blessing and a burden. The knowledge inside was meant for angels, not for human minds. Some stories say Adam read it and saw the structure of all things, the rhythm of the seasons, the flow of rivers, and the reason death must exist. Others say the knowledge overwhelmed him, that to glimpse divine perfection was to feel the full weight of being human. But Adam was not the book's last keeper. When he died, Raziel took it back, and later entrusted it to Enoch, the man who walked with God. Enoch is said to have added his own writings before being taken into heaven, where legend says he became the angel Metatron. In time, the book found its way to Noah. According to mystical traditions, the plans for the ark were not whispered by God, but copied from Raziel's book itself. After the flood, the book's lineage continued. King Solomon was said to have inherited it and used its diagrams to call upon angels and command spirits. Over the centuries, Sefer Raziel grew beyond legend. It reappeared in medieval Jewish mysticism, in fragments, translations, and secret copies passed between scholars studying the hidden teachings of Kabbalah. Each version was a little different. Scribes added notes, replaced missing words with coded symbols, or left certain passages incomplete to protect anyone who might read them too deeply. The book described celestial hierarchies, the true names of angels and rituals for calling upon their power. It spoke of the Shem HaMeforesh, the ineffable name of God, a sequence of 72 letters said to hold the fabric of creation itself. But there was danger in those words. Mystics warned that mispronouncing a divine name was not a small mistake. They compared it to striking a wrong note in creation's music, a sound that could throw the harmony of heaven into disarray. By the 13th century, the church had heard of it. Copies of Sefer Raziel were banned, and anyone caught studying it faced excommunication. Still, manuscripts survived, hidden in the libraries of Jewish mystics, Christian alchemists, and Renaissance philosophers who sought to understand the forces behind existence. Each group claimed their copy was the true one. Each believed it carried a trace of God's voice, though only the pure of heart could hear it fully. One medieval scholar wrote that the letters were never meant to be spoken or read aloud. They were to be seen. He believed that simply looking upon them could awaken the same divine order that shaped the cosmos. If the story is true and the book began in Eden, it leaves an unsettling thought. How much divine knowledge can pass through human hands before it changes? Can something meant for eternity survive being rewritten by mortal minds? If the book of Raziel once carried the voice of angels, what happens when over centuries that same voice begins to sound like something else entirely? The Akashic records. Mystics speak of a vast library, invisible yet eternal, where every act, word, and thought of humanity is preserved. Some claim to have read its pages. In the late 19th century, Western mystics began to speak of an otherworldly archive, a kind of universal library that contained the complete record of everything that has ever happened and everything that ever will. They called it the Akashic records. The term comes from the Sanskrit word akasha, meaning ether or sky, a concept in Indian philosophy describing the subtle element that underlies all things. To theosophists like Helena Blavatsky, this ether wasn't empty space, but a living field, an invisible fabric holding the imprint of every event, every thought, and every feeling in the universe. According to this view, reality wasn't written on paper or in stone, but in the vibration of existence itself. Every word spoken, every decision made, every idea imagined left a trace. And somewhere beyond the limits of physical perception, all those traces remained. For mystics, prophets, and clairvoyants, the Akashic records weren't just philosophical ideas. They were a place of direct experience. The American trance medium Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, claimed to access them while in a self-induced sleep state. He described entering a realm of infinite knowledge, where past lives, forgotten civilizations, and unseen futures could be read like chapters in a book. From this state, he gave thousands of readings, diagnosing illnesses, describing Atlantis, and predicting cycles of human evolution, all he said from the records. Other esoteric traditions describe similar encounters: sages reading the Book of Life, angels weighing deeds upon celestial tablets, or prophets receiving revelations from the heavenly archives. To those who believed, these weren't just symbols, they were glimpses of the same source, expressed in different ways. Modern thinkers, trying to bridge the mystical and the scientific, have drawn comparisons between the Akashic concept and contemporary physics. Some liken it to holographic memory, where each fragment of a system contains the information of the whole. Others compare it to quantum information theory, where every interaction, no matter how small, contributes to a universal data field that never truly disappears. In this view, consciousness might not just observe the universe, it might record it. Yet, no experiment has ever proven that such a record exists. It remains intangible, unverifiable, unfalsifiable, but still compelling. Its persistence isn't about evidence, but the way it challenges our understanding of knowledge itself. If every act and intention is permanently inscribed somewhere, then nothing is truly lost. Memory doesn't only exist in the human brain, it becomes a property of existence. History isn't just written by those who live it, it's encoded into reality. The Akashic records also raise a powerful question. If all knowledge already exists, what does it mean to discover something? Are we uncovering truths or simply remembering them? And if the universe contains a perfect memory of everything that's ever been, then perhaps time isn't something we move through. It's something that unfolds all around us, at once. Even in the age of digital archives and cloud storage, the Akashic myth remains, a symbol of the total memory of existence. For mystics, it's proof of a divine order. For scientists, it's a poetic way to imagine a universe where information never truly fades. And so, the question still stands. If every truth is written somewhere, could the very first one still exist, not in words, but in something older than time itself?